everybody, and welcome back. It's been quite some time, but now on this fine spring day, everything is finally beginning to open up again for the year, and I have stuff I can talk about. So today we have a rather special plant that I found in the yard. They're not typically so common around here, although they are native, and these are by far my favorite native species. They are called Erisema triphyllum, or the jack in the pulpit, so that would be Erisema triphyllum. They are in the arum family. Araceae, or Araceae, depending on how you wish to pronounce that. And this is the same thing, or same family as philodendrons, duckweed, and skunk cabbages. So, with that in mind, it is now possible to introduce this plant for what it is. So, as with many aroids, or arums, they have two different, they only have one leaf, so this entire structure here is a single leaf. This is a leaf stalk. You can find the stem underground, and the reason they're called triphyllum is because each leaf has 3 leaflets, so 1, 2, 3 goes to that. These are a ephemeral plant only occurring in the spring because they usually live in the understories of the forest, and this gives them a very short window between when it's warm enough for them to wake up and when it's warm enough that all the upper story trees wake up and will promptly begin shading them out. So this very short window means that each year they can't find a way to store up very much energy. And that leads to the absolutely fascinating trick these plants have for pollination. So this is the flower structure here, the inflorescence. All arum plants have a spathe, which is this hooded area, and the spadix, which is a stalk in the middle. Now this entire thing is not a flower. Flowers are found at the base, here, attached to the spadix. And in this plant species, or this genus rather, all Erisema do this, not just the one that's around here. They have an interesting ability where the plants will start their lives producing male flowers only, because in all plants it's much easier to produce pollen or male spores than it is to produce eggs, which will then be turned into seeds. So when these guys here, and this is the first year that this plant has been up in this location, so I can conclude that this one is probably male only. They start their lives without making any fruit, and then, after they reach a large enough size to have stored up the nutrients required, it is possible that they will begin producing female flowers instead, and if that's the case, you will then be able to see them in the fall producing these bright red stalks of berries. The berries look quite appetizing. I wouldn't recommend it. They're poisonous. Most fruit, especially in North America, that is red is meant to be eaten by birds, not mammals. So most mammals can't see red, most birds can. So that's why you find all these bright colored fruit that are poisonous to things like rodents, dogs, people, so on. Now, the other thing about this plant is that I can't actually smell it, but allegedly they have kind of a sort of fungusy smell coming out of the flower that attracts fungus gnats. So in the male plants, the fungus gnats are then able to escape the flowers cluster here, which, if you look down, you still can't really see it. The flowers aren't entirely visible, although maybe a little bit on the edges of the spadix. But the fungus gnats will be able to leave if the plant is male. If the plant is female this year, however, there is no exit to the flower. They are not intended to find their way back out, and will often die in there. Now, this plant isn't carnivorous. This is just a disturbingly thorough way of ensuring that pollination is successful. But I don't think anybody has ever really accused nature of being kind. Now, as I mentioned before, this plant is an understory plant, so apart from a few weeks in the beginning of spring, they are in complete shade. They're often found in wet areas, but this particular one is actually living in fairly dry soil, so apparently it is possible for them to at least flower like that. Although, if you want to see truly healthy ones, especially with more than one of these leaves, you will have to end up going to a swamp or something like that. So this lends their common, or one of their common names would be bog onion, because that's the sort of environment they tend to be found in, and they have a relatively large bulb underneath. Now, this individual, as I've actually just noticed, it wasn't doing this yesterday, does actually have a second leaf down there. So I don't expect that leaf to get very large, just because it's about to be shady here, but it is possible, theoretically, that this one could grow larger in the future, and perhaps in the coming years, you will be able to see fruits on this one. Now, the reason that these are my favorite plant is actually just because I like the coloration you have here. So the coloration of the light spots is presumably to act as a sort of false exit, so that way insects that fly in have a harder time finding their way back out and have to visit the flowers down here more. But it's quite nice, in my opinion, just with the striping patterns. And you can find this plant, as well as some fairly close relatives, sold in, say, native plant nurseries for North America as sort of a wildflower planting that you can do if you're interested in that sort of thing. That is all for this species. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to be back recording in more frequent time now that spring is here and there's actually wild plants I can talk about, not just stuff that's been indoors all winter and not looking so good because of that.